Have you ever felt emotionally trapped by words that seem harmless, but leave you questioning your worth? In this video, we uncover 5 dangerous phrases men might say, revealing hidden manipulation and emotional games that can drain your peace. Inspired by Carl Jung's profound psychology, we'll explore how these words exploit your feelings, guilt, love, or insecurity to control you. Curious about what these phrases are and how they silently sabotage your self-mastery? Stay tuned as we reveal not just the red flags, but also how to respond with strength, protecting your emotional freedom and inner power. Following the emotional traps we introduced, let's dive into why recognizing these phrases is so critical for your self-mastery and inner peace. As Carl Jung emphasized, our unconscious shadow holds the traits we deny, often projecting them onto others in relationships. When a man speaks words that seem innocent but carry manipulative undertones, he's often operating from this shadow, avoiding the self-reflection Jung deemed essential for growth. Ignoring these signs doesn't just risk conflict, it threatens your emotional freedom, pulling you into a dynamic where your energy is drained and your self-worth is eroded. This is why we must look beyond the surface of words and see the patterns they reveal, a wisdom both Jung and Stoic philosophers like Seneca championed. Seneca once warned, "We waste much of our time on those who don't deserve it." For a conscious woman striving for clarity and growth, tolerating these patterns can disconnect you from your inner power, leaving you feeling trapped in a cycle of emotional labor. The first phrase to watch for is, "You have to accept me as I am." At first glance, this might sound like a vulnerable plea for authenticity, a declaration that resonates with anyone who values honesty in relationships. But don't be deceived by its seemingly deep tone. Carl Jung taught that true self-knowledge, the foundation of all wisdom, begins when we stop making excuses and start integrating our shadow. When a man uses this phrase to justify harmful behaviors such as emotional manipulation, irresponsibility, or passive-aggressive tendencies, he's not being authentic. He's refusing to evolve. You'll often hear this line after you've pointed out troubling actions. Perhaps he's dismissed your feelings, avoided accountability, or lashed out in subtle ways. Instead of addressing your concerns, he flips the script, playing the victim or accusing you of trying to change him. This isn't vulnerability, it's a defense mechanism rooted in his shadow, a refusal to confront the parts of himself that need growth. The emotional toll of this phrase is profound. Accepting it without question means signing up for a relationship where you do all the heavy lifting, adjusting, sacrificing, and making space for his flaws while he remains stagnant. As Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, said, "The perfection of character is to live each day as if it were your last, without laziness, without pretense." A man who hides behind "that's just how I am" lacks the courage to grow, leaving you to row the boat of the relationship alone. For a woman who's worked hard to cultivate her peace, discipline, and self-respect, this dynamic is a betrayal of your own values. Over time, you'll find yourself trapped in a cycle of excuses, broken promises, and emotional exhaustion, where your needs are sidelined and your growth is stunted. Jung's teachings remind us that real authenticity isn't about staying the same. It's about having the bravery to evolve. If his words reveal a constant resistance to change, a denial of responsibility, and a defensive stance against improvement, you're facing a pattern that will only worsen, threatening the emotional freedom we spoke of earlier. So ask yourself, is he truly willing to look inward, or is this just a sophisticated excuse to avoid growth? Building on the resistance to growth we explored in the first phrase, the second warning sign reveals an even deeper issue, a lack of self-accountability that can trap you in a cycle of blame and emotional turmoil. The phrase, "all my exes were crazy toxic," might initially seem like a man simply venting about his past, but it's far more insidious. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow becomes critical here. He taught that what we refuse to make conscious controls us, often leading us to project our unresolved flaws onto others. When a man consistently labels all his exes as toxic without reflecting on his own role, he's projecting his shadow, avoiding the self-examination that Jung and Stoic philosophers like Epictetus deemed essential for growth. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." If he can't see his part in past conflicts, he's stuck in a victim mindset, a pattern that will likely repeat with you. This phrase is a red flag because it signals emotional immaturity and a chronic refusal to take responsibility. A man who speaks this way often expects you to be the perfect partner who won't disappoint him like his exes, placing an unfair burden on you to prove yourself. But as Jung warned, what we deny submits us. His denial of his own flaws means he'll continue acting out the same unconscious script, and sooner or later, you might become the next crazy ex in his story. This dynamic erodes your emotional peace, forcing you into a relationship where you're constantly managing his projections rather than growing together. For a woman committed to her self-improvement and spiritual awakening, this is a dangerous trap. You've worked hard to cultivate clarity and self-respect. Why let someone else's unresolved issues pull you into their chaos? The Stoics would argue that you can't build a healthy relationship with someone who refuses to face their reflection. If he's never acknowledged his own mistakes in past relationships, what makes you think he'll start now? This pattern of blame isn't just a minor flaw, it's a fundamental barrier to mutual growth, echoing the resistance to change we saw in the first phrase. A conscious woman must protect her energy and walk away from such dynamics, choosing instead a partner who shares her commitment to self-awareness and evolution, ensuring her emotional freedom remains intact. Expanding on the victim mindset and projection we discussed in the previous phrase, the third red flag takes manipulation to a more insidious level: emotional blackmail. The phrase, "If you really loved me, you'd do what I ask," might sound like a heartfelt plea, but it's a calculated tactic designed to exploit your emotions. Carl Jung's insights into the shadow reveal how such phrases often stem from a man's unresolved insecurities, projecting his need for control under the guise of love. By framing his demands as a test of your affection, he weaponizes your feelings, guilt, love, or fear of loss, to override your boundaries. This isn't a request for connection, it's a power play, one that echoes the lack of accountability we saw in the second phrase, but with a more direct emotional impact. The danger of this phrase lies in its subtlety and the gradual erosion of your autonomy. At first, it might seem like a small compromise, agreeing to his request to prove your love. But as Jung noted, unbalanced relationships often begin when one partner uses emotional projection to dominate the other. Over time, these demands escalate, and you find yourself sacrificing more of your authenticity, bending your values to avoid conflict or guilt. The Stoics, like Epictetus, offer a clear counterpoint. No one can enslave you emotionally unless you allow it. True love, they argue, is built on mutual respect and freedom, not coercion. When a man uses this phrase, he's not seeking partnership. He's seeking submission, conditioning your worth on how well you meet his expectations. For a woman dedicated to her spiritual awakening and self-improvement, this dynamic is a direct threat to the emotional freedom we've emphasized throughout. You've cultivated clarity and strength to grow into your best self. Why let someone use your love against you? Giving in to this emotional blackmail doesn't strengthen the relationship. It weakens your sense of self, leaving you trapped in a cycle where your boundaries are constantly tested. Jung's teachings remind us that real love is a conscious act of shared freedom, not a tool for manipulation. If his words make you feel guilty for honoring your needs, you're not in a relationship that supports your growth. You're in one that seeks to control it, much like the patterns of blame and avoidance we've already explored. Following the emotional blackmail we examined in the previous phrase, the fourth warning sign escalates into a direct assault on your self-worth. You're not enough for me. This phrase doesn't just hurt. It aims to dismantle your core identity, echoing the manipulative control we saw earlier, but with a sharper edge. Carl Jung's teachings on the shadow are illuminating here. He explained that people often project their inner dissatisfaction onto others. When a man says this, he's not truly critiquing you. He's revealing his own emptiness, using you as a mirror for his insecurities. By making you feel inadequate, he seeks to keep you dependent on his validation, a tactic that mirrors the power dynamics of emotional coercion we've already discussed. The impact of this phrase is devastating for a woman on a path of spiritual awakening and self-improvement. You've worked hard to build confidence and clarity, yet these words can plant seeds of self-doubt, making you question your value. Stoic philosophy, as Marcus Aurelius advised, reminds us that our worth isn't tied to others' judgments, but to our own virtue and actions. Do not let another man's soul rule over yours. If you internalize this phrase, you risk losing the emotional freedom you fought for, trapped in a cycle of striving to meet his ever-shifting standards. Jung's wisdom reinforces this. Those who search only for shadows cannot see your light. A man who belittles you isn't a partner in growth. He's an obstacle to your journey, much like the manipulative patterns we've uncovered. Walk away to protect your self-respect and inner peace, continuing from the attack on self-worth we discussed. The fifth phrase, "do whatever you want," said with a passive-aggressive tone, introduces a subtler but equally destructive form of manipulation. Unlike the direct assault of the previous phrase, this one masquerades as permission, but it's a trap designed to make you feel guilty for asserting your independence. Carl Jung's insights into the shadow reveal how such ambiguous statements often stem from a man's unexpressed resentment, lurking in his unconscious. Instead of communicating openly, he expects you to decode his hidden frustration, mirroring the emotional coercion we've seen, but with a deceptive twist. This lack of clarity creates a dynamic where you're left second-guessing yourself, eroding the self-respect you've worked to maintain. The Stoics, like Seneca, emphasize that healthy relationships thrive on direct communication. Speak in a way that your words don't require interpretation. When a man uses this phrase to provoke guilt or drama, he's not fostering connection. He's wielding ambiguity as a tool of control. For a woman on a journey of self-improvement and spiritual awakening, this is a critical red flag. You've cultivated emotional intelligence to honor your needs and growth. Yet this phrase forces you into a cycle of uncertainty, where you're constantly trying to please or avoid conflict. Jung's teachings remind us that true freedom comes from living with authenticity, not reacting to manipulative games. If his words leave you feeling trapped in emotional riddles, you're not in a relationship that supports your journey. You're in one that undermines it, much like the attacks on your worth we've explored. Break the cycle by choosing clarity and walking away from ambiguity to safeguard your inner peace. Building on the manipulative ambiguity we uncovered in the last phrase, let's conclude by empowering you to take action against these toxic patterns. Each of the 5 phrases, "You have to accept me as I am," "All my exes were crazy, toxic," "If you really love me, you do what I ask," "You're not enough for me," and "Do whatever you want," reveals a deeper resistance to growth, projection, and control, as Carl Jung's shadow concept highlights. These words aren't just fleeting remarks. They're warning signs of a relationship that will drain your energy and stifle your spiritual awakening. Jung taught that what we don't make conscious becomes our fate. If you ignore these signs, you risk being trapped in a dynamic where your self-worth and emotional freedom, which we've emphasized, are constantly undermined. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, offer a powerful solution. Do not let another man's soul rule over yours. Your journey of self-improvement and clarity deserves a partner who supports your growth, not one who uses manipulation to hold you back. A conscious woman must prioritize her inner peace over the chaos of emotional games. Walk away from these red flags with dignity, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. As Jung's wisdom suggests, real love is a shared act of freedom, not a battle for control. By choosing to leave, you're not just protecting your present, you're safeguarding your future, ensuring you can continue your path of self-discovery without being weighed down by someone else's unresolved shadows. Take this step to reclaim your power and live authentically, as both Jung and the Stoics would urge. For your peace is worth more than any relationship that demands your submission. Having empowered you to walk away from toxic dynamics, as we concluded in the previous section, let's now explore practical steps to reclaim your emotional freedom and stay true to your journey of self-improvement. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that awareness is the first step to transformation. By recognizing these 5 phrases as red flags, you've already begun to break free from their control. But awareness alone isn't enough. Action is key. Start by setting clear boundaries. When you hear manipulative words, pause and reflect. Are these words fostering mutual growth, or are they pulling you into someone else's shadow? If it's the latter, respond with clarity, not guilt, and distance yourself from the conversation, just as we emphasize the need for clarity over ambiguity. Next, cultivate self-validation, a principle both Jung and the Stoics, like Epictetus, championed. Epictetus said, "No one can enslave you emotionally unless you allow it." Instead of seeking approval from a partner who belittles or controls you, affirm your worth through your own values and actions. Journaling can help. Write down your strengths and the progress you made on your spiritual awakening. This practice grounds you, ensuring your self-respect remains intact, as we've stressed throughout. Finally, surround yourself with people who share your commitment to growth. Seek out communities, whether online or in person, that resonate with your journey, such as groups focused on Jungian psychology or self-improvement. These connections will reinforce your path, offering support without the emotional drain of toxic relationships. By taking these steps, you're not just walking away from harm. You're walking toward a life of authenticity and inner peace, as Jung and the Stoics would advocate. Your journey of self-discovery deserves nothing less than relationships that uplift and inspire you, free from the shadows of manipulation we've uncovered. With the practical steps we've outlined to reclaim your emotional freedom, as discussed in the previous section, let's close with a final call to action that solidifies your journey of self-discovery. Carl Jung's wisdom has shown us that recognizing the shadows, both in ourselves and others, is the key to living authentically. The 5 phrases we've explored are not just words, they're windows into patterns that can derail your spiritual awakening if left unchecked. By walking away and setting boundaries, as we've advised, you're choosing to honor your growth over emotional chaos. The Stoics, like Seneca, reinforce this. The greatest power is self-mastery. Your path to inner peace lies in mastering your responses, not in fixing someone else's unresolved issues. So, take this knowledge and let it guide you. If you hear these phrases, don't hesitate. Act with the clarity and strength you've cultivated. Share your journey with a supportive community like the one we're building here at Mystic Jung Insights, where we dive deeper into Jungian psychology and self-improvement. Subscribe and join us to explore more ways to protect your energy and live a life aligned with your highest values. For a woman, age 25 to 45 seeking meaning, this is your moment to step into your power. As Jung said, you cannot make someone see your light if they are only searching for their shadows. Choose relationships that reflect your light, not ones that dim it. Live boldly, authentically, and free. Your spiritual journey deserves nothing less.